I'm just so proud of the city and what you're doing for the city in terms of this very important and generational change that everybody has wanted in Public Square for a while. So thank you, and we're really excited to work with you. And this is going to be a collaboration for the next few months, as you know. And so I thank you for that openness and willingness to work together on what is one of the most important projects that we've seen in a really long time. So thank you, and let's get started.
Questions?
I know August has some questions, so we'll start there. If you would like to go after August, just signal down here, and we're going to start a list. So.
Thanks, Madam Chair. Good morning. Yeah, still morning. This is actually a charge to this administration or the next administration. I think it's vitally important, considering the billions of dollars that's going to be invested in and around this square, that these streetscape around arteries study. Ontario, Superior, and Frankfurt. It's vitally important. And those experiences are less than desirable, in my opinion. And when we talk about front doors, in my opinion, the square is the front door. And obviously the lake has its other challenges. But I know the burden shouldn't totally fall on Sherwin-Williams, but I ask that the administration start looking at that sooner than later, in my opinion. Thank you.
A couple of things I want to just reference to Mr. Fluker's comment with respect to the front doors and the circulation. There is a downtown mobility study that's going to be taking place, working with NOACA, DCA, and others to look at the downtown system. So the points that were made is valid. I think the infusion of this number of employees can also be additive to that analysis. So that study is underway, and we'll talk further about potentially, integrating or being informed by whatever comes out of that analysis. Thank you.
Alan?
Thanks. The first thing I want to say is not really dealing with this particular project, except it is. And I just want to say to Sherwin-Williams that as a member of the Landmarks Commission, I have a great concern about what happens to your present complex. I think it's one of the most endearing sort of landmarks that we have, and as part of the Terminal Tower complex. I realize that you can't respond to that because you don't really know what's going to happen yet, but I just wanted to say that for the record. I'll jump right in and just say a couple things about the proposal. I think there's a lot of things to like about it. I'm just going to bring up two things. You can certainly put me in the camp that the pavilion needs to be a bigger building than it is. I think the pavilion building is maybe as important, if not more important, than the tower. And, for many years, there hasn't been a building on that site, and it's been like a missing tooth in Public Square. And now you're in the unenviable position of completing Public Square, really, with that building. So I think I just think a two-story building isn't going to do it. Then the other thing is, because this is a conceptual review, I'll talk about the Sky Bridge briefly. Conceptually, I don't like the Sky Bridge. I don't like sky bridges in general, and for a lot of the reasons that's been talked about. But if it's got to be a sky bridge, make it something. Don't try to hide it. I think that's the mistake a lot of people try to make. Make it part of the architecture. Make it something, because you can't hide it. It's going across quite a broad street, and so make it wide, make it colorful. I don't know. Make it something that really adds to the whole complex.
Giancarlo?
Good morning, everyone.
John, speaking to the mic.
Oh, sorry. In conjunction with what Mr. Dwyer just said, I like the concept of the Sky Bridge. but I see them as more dramatic. I see them more like a river, like obviously Cleveland is famous for its river, for its bridges. So just to make a walkway, it's an opportunity to make something really, really interesting, as he suggested. And that would be maybe a lingering place. Maybe just instead of thinking in terms of people walking from one place to another as quickly as possible, maybe it's instead of like it's almost be like walking on the street, encountering and maybe even some kind of a gathering place as people interact with each other during the course of the day. So I'm in favor of the idea of the Sky Bridge. I just would like to see something much more architecturally pleasing. Again, we're building a future landmark for the city of Cleveland, an amazing concept architecturally and socially. It's changing the downtown area of Cleveland. So anything that we can do to encourage that community element and that visual pleasure would be, I think, really appropriate. And the other thing that I would like to talk briefly on is I'm not sure what the difference between the tower lobby and the pavilion lobby is. I mean, I think I know, but I'm looking at the, again, going back to, I'm a sculptor and artist, so the idea of color always fascinated me, and the research that goes into creating colors. And that's something that Sherwin-Williams has been doing for over 150 years. So the idea of maybe a museum-like structure, again, more involved with the public in the pavilion area where we can show some of the mysteries of color and the research that you've done for over a century. And maybe using possibly some equipment or some things that you have left over in the older buildings to create a more of a public space that includes a library concept, a museum concept that can be, again, another addition to the community of Cleveland.
Wow, that's interesting.
And then we mentioned briefly the concept of the front door. Where is the front door of this complex? What would be considered a front door?
Front door is here at the pavilion.
Right.
The way that you think about it, it's the front door for Sherwin-Williams, and the way that it opens up to the public square is the front porch of the building.
Mm-hmm.
If you're a visitor, this is the
Right. Okay. Well, thank you for now.
just one comment.
Sure.
Relative to color. Work for lots of different corporations. This is the first corporation we work with.
Yeah.
They're all about color.
Right. Right.
Pretty amazing.
Yeah.
So how to integrate that
Into the architecture and the lighting.
Yeah. Yeah. It's a huge. Yes. 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 Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
Well, just a reminder, we've heard from the audience that to please speak as closely to the microphone as you can, because online they're only able to hear if you're close. Robert, and then we'll go down the list.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And again, good morning. I thought it was an excellent presentation. I hope that the comments that you've received so far and our comments will help to just enhance this project. I wrote down that the CEO's quote was to bring to life who we are. I think it's critically important, and I'll just elaborate a little bit on Giancarlo's comments, about creating a inviting public space. So not just visitors of Sherwin-Williams, but totally, I mean, you're on public square. We need to engage the public. It's part of the name. I think it has to be a huge element of that pavilion. And the building, I think, should be bigger and be programmed to really invite the public in and tell the story of Sherwin-Williams, of who you are and what it means to the city and how much the city embraces Sherwin-Williams. So you have that opportunity. And so I think the motion that passed, the recommendation that we get from the Design Review Committee, and it's just a recommendation, we don't have to act on that specifically in our motion, but it did exclude the parking garage, and I think for the reasons that were articulated, and I agree with that element of the motion. I think that particular design element needs to be studied in much greater detail to provide more flexibility and opportunity to really be an enhancement to the overall solution for Sherwin-Williams.
Thank you. No comment back. It's okay. If you don't. Yeah. Raymond. Oh, sorry. There's keeping a list, so we have Raymond first, and then we're going down the list. Raymond first,
All right, thank you very much.
and then Bailey.
And thank you for the presentation as well. Just one comment when it comes to the sky bridges. I don't have any opposition to sky bridges myself. I completely understand the need for the sky bridge across Frankfurt for the parking and to have your employees have that direct access into the tower. The one question I have, though, however, and this is coming from the perspective of a downtown resident, right, and somebody who walks downtown and goes from one side to the other and down into the flats and so forth. Frankfurt Avenue between West 6th and West 3rd, as we sit here today, is pretty much a dead street, if you will. There's parking, there's not very much traffic, and quite frankly, not very much pedestrian traffic either. When you're going from one part of town or from the center of town down into the flats, you're quite frankly crossing that block through the parking, the flat parking area that's there now. So my question is, was any consideration given to that retail liner being placed along Frankfurt Avenue as opposed to West 3rd to continue to draw people from that public square area in that specific direction down into the warehouse district?
Yeah. I mean, actually, we really hadn't put, we knew that we needed to do, by code, we needed to do something along West 3rd. We hadn't really talked a whole lot about what it would look like going down Frankfurt. We do know that is, we wanted to maintain it as a pedestrian walkway. I think we definitely have we just engaged our landscape architect. I definitely think there's some opportunities to improve what that looks like. Certainly needs to be paved for sure. But yeah, I mean, that's something that we could potentially look at.
And the reason I say that is because much like there are entrances into Playhouse Square, the arches into Playhouse Square, and there's definite entrances there. That might be an opportunity as well as an entrance into the warehouse district through that corridor. It just seems that if there was something drawing people towards that Frankfurt Avenue, the pedestrian traffic would rather go that way than up West 3rd for that retail. So that's my only comment.
Okay,
for thought.
thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah. Commissioner Bailey,
Hi.
a little bit closer, if you don't mind.
Oh, can you hear me? Oh, okay. Your project is kind of unique because you have 3 different, locations, and you're trying to connect everything. One of the things I have several, but one of the things I want to comment on, you're trying to use the pavilion as a gateway from Public Square, and many of the comments I'm hearing, one of it is my concern is trying to draw the pedestrian to your location, but it's mainly your employee. And I'm assuming a lot of them going to use their cars, and some may want to use the RTA to get to your location. So I'm looking at the yellow part where it says Pavilion Lobby, and I'm just wondering, have you thought about maybe that portion of it, just the first floor level, making it into 2 separate entities and just have it open just to walk through on the outside, and the rest of the level enclosed. And that way, on the outside, you can continue walking to cross the street to get to the tower. And I don't have a problem with the sky, but I agree with the comments about blending in with the rest of the building. Don't just put a sky bridge and it's just thrown in there and it doesn't bring in architecture. And that's one of my comments. And I did hear earlier, and I need someone to correct me if I'm hearing it right. In the earlier presentation at 9 o'clock this morning, You were also using the skylight as your main entity to bring your utilities from the tower to your pavilion. Am I hearing that correct? So, okay, so do you have a backup? Let's say something happened to that bridge. Yeah. So I'm used to having utility go in the ground. So that's my comment, having a backup plan on that one. So that's when the tunnel issue come under there. So that's one of my main comments. So if I have any more, I'll just bring some. I just have a lot of notes. But those are my two things that I am bringing up. So that's what I have for now.
Thank you. Jonathan?
Oh, thank you, Madam Chair. I have lots of notes, and I've been known to talk very quickly, so I'm going to try to be not so quick in how I talk. The first thing I love that you guys did a project in Oklahoma City, and I usually get my point across through anecdotes, so I'm going to give an anecdote. Oklahoma City was, in the time when you guys were building that project, was rated as urbanistically the most unwalkable city in the entire United States. Similarly, I think you guys completed your project in 2007. Was it, or it's around there, it started in 2007. I think it was 2008 or 2009. Jeff Speck, the writer of what was known as the Walkable City, and the concept of the Walkable City from the New Urbanists was brought in to redevelop the urban core of Oklahoma City. And that was a fantastic thing that happened for the city, and it was in conjunction with that also brought people to, losing my words, to the city. So what I'm saying is that in conjunction to the tower being a way of economic development, what happens at the street level and the way that people also interact with the buildings is equally important to the economic growth of a city as a whole. And so with that being said, I know that Director Collier had mentioned that a study is going to be done of the traffic patterns, which, as someone who does live downtown, I live about 3 blocks away from where this project is going to be, I think it's going to change a lot of your perception of the way that this kind of is structured. But I also see it as an opportunity to restructure the way we think about this entire block, which goes into my second anecdote, which is history. So not many people know, not for just in this room, but maybe people watching online, is that Terminal Tower, as we love it, is unfinished. It was not finished in the 1920s because we hit this wonderful thing called the Great Depression, which would have had another tower next to it. In about the 90s, there were 2 large buildings called, I took notes because I'm terrible at names, the Ulmer Building and the Marshall Building, which were about 11, 13 stories that kind of capped off public square as we know it. And behind that was about close to 100 very, very small buildings that were basically eradicated in the 90s. So we have a lovely history of unfinishedness in this city, and which sometimes gets lost to history. But I think the project, as it stands right now, and the idea of the which I understand business, right? The speculative nature of what's going to happen behind this site. So if it's not going to be a building at the moment, I think included in when that transportation study happens, that it needs to think about that first phase is, maybe it will be longer than a year, maybe it will be longer than 5. And we need to think about how that's going to affect the urban context of everything that's happening around this site. So I don't know if my anecdote gets my point across, but I think the study of the way that people and cars and the relationship of the size of those things is step 1, and then really taking it as a challenge to redesign the way we think of those proportions and redesign the way we think of, this is how big a street needs to be in conjunction to the pedestrian way. And I think this whole committee and this whole administration would agree, what is written right now doesn't have to be the way that we always do things. And I think this is a milestone moment to redefine what we as a city believe to be what a street is and what a correct walkway is. And maybe this is the catalyst for doing that. So like, I know that we had brought up, like, we're maintaining minimum code variances. You know, this is not where my expertise comes in on the law and these things, but I'm thinking more in terms of the ethos of culture. And so I would take it as a challenge in the next phase to say, you know, if everything was off the table and I really wanted to change this, what would you guys do? So that's my challenge. I know you can't come up with an answer now, but even just seeing the conceptual challenge of, like, say you took all the cards and all the rules off the table, what would you, like, really want to do? Because I think this is a moment when we can all say, like, this is what really should happen, and not being held back. So that's my first comment. It's long, I'm sorry.
Okay. Thank you. Sure, go ahead.
First, thank you for your comments, Mr. Benizzi. So you're absolutely right about Oklahoma City, the most unwalkable city in the United States. And you may recall, I sort of fast forward to last year, is now a travel destination, right? Well, and I mentioned in the presentation about 8 miles of downtown, which I believe you're familiar with. And so the Devon project was the trigger for that, and that's something that the city advanced, and just by way of association, the landscape architect for Devon and for all the redesigning of downtown is the same landscape architect that's just been brought on board on this project.
I'm actually very happy to hear that.
Thank you.
So.
Councilman Slade, and then I'll go.
Thank you, and thank you for the presentation, and thank you to Sherwin-Williams. I think everybody said, but it's worth rehashing that it's this company's such an institution in our city, and we're happy to see them and support them and watch them grow and create new jobs. This isn't just about a building, but this is about many of our neighbors who work for Sherwin-Williams and really stabilizing our city moving forward by keeping them here. You know, I will be brief, is what all politicians say, but. Just a couple things to note. One, I want to begin by agreeing with August and making a charge back to City Hall about our downtown road system. When you're coming from Ohio City and you crest the top of the bridge and you look down at the width of Superior Avenue, it's so comically large that it almost makes the city look empty. And I think that there's a lot that we can do in addition to this project of making people feel as they come into Cleveland that they're coming into the urban core and not coming into something that feels uninhabited or not busy. A charge that I believe that our committee should put back on the project is really a timeline for the retail liners. As it was mentioned in the previous committees, there's a number of examples around downtown where space has been left for that type of development and it hasn't occurred to date. I'm thinking, across from the Galleria, a couple other places, and it's difficult to predict when Sherwin-Williams would have the demand or the need to construct a second tower on the 135 space lot, but I think more in the near term, it's possible to put on a timeline an ability to construct that space, to activate it. As the director said, there's an opportunity for kind of spin-out businesses and other things that are maybe unique to this type of business that wouldn't be applicable if maybe we were building a tower for a law firm or another type of use. Moving down the list, I agree with all the comments about the elevation of the pavilion. I would like to see it larger, and I guess what I am wanting to compare it to is if you go catty corner across the square, none of us think of the BP building as being set back from the roadway, but the truth is that there's a very large atrium, and I measured it on Google Earth, roughly, let's say, 230 feet from the roadway of Public Square until the elevation of the tower. This is a little longer, obviously, because there's West 3rd. It's about an additional 100 feet, but it's possible, as you're standing on Public Square, to view this pavilion and not see it as part of the larger structure and incorporate it within the larger structure, even though that might not be true necessarily if you were to walk behind it. The only link would be the Sky Bridge. The other question I have, and this follows up on a comment that Mr. Parker had made in the previous session, the design of Public Square, the angle of Public Square is really pulling people towards Frankfurt, and I understand, pragmatically, looking at this design, why the pavilion is shaped as it is. There's this large open area that moves towards Public Square, but I'm curious if there were discussions about doing the opposite and having it angle towards Frankfurt. And in that scenario, the southern side of the pavilion, the southeastern corner, would line up with the northeastern corner of the Renaissance across the street, and it would move to kind of move people towards Frankfurt. It would open up the patio in front of 55 Public Square and preserve their sight lines of the square and the skyline. And in addition to the elevation, I'm just wondering if there's an ability to repivot this building so that it doesn't cause the pedestrian moving towards Frankfurt to kind of feel like they are now coming into a cavern, that's just a natural progression. The last couple things, the vacation of Frankfurt between 3rd and 6th. My preference would be in an ability to maintain this as a kind of a robust pedestrian access. I mean, on weekends, is it possible to do ingress and egress off of 3rd into the parking garage solely, so that this is maintained as just solely public access for pedestrians? But also, since we're dealing with a paint company and speaking on the council side of the building, there's been some frustrations in the past about ideas of using paint within roadways as public art, and I think that this could be a cool opportunity. Instead of feeling like you're in a cavern, it's a larger public art experience, and the roadway could be incorporated into that if it is to be vacated and no longer under the sole discretion of the city of Cleveland. The last two comments are, I think this project, as all projects, should be held to a public art standard, but since this is a paint company, since it's a well-known company, I'd really like for there to be some interactive public art and within the right-of-way, within the public realm, not solely within the pavilion. And I think that there's ways to engage the site with the public in that way. And then lastly, I'm optimistic that a second tower will be built, but as someone noted, temporary in Cleveland can be a pretty loosely defined word. So to that end, I believe that these committees should hold a pretty hard line on what the streetscape interaction with that southern parking lot is, if that is what moves forward, including transit waiting environments, because the reality might be, Jonathan, I'm 34, so temporary for this site has been my entire life, and I am optimistic that it's not going to take 34 years for additional development to happen in this area, but I also realize that it's not within the next 5, so we should treat that lot and its interaction with the pedestrian in the city as somewhat permanent for the time being. Thank you.
Thank you. We're going to go to Dr. McCrae Scott and then back to August.
Thank you, Madam Chair. My main concern is the traffic pattern, actually, and make sure that you have, because it's going to be really critical to the project, particularly on Frankfurt Avenue. It's just so narrow there. And I just want to make sure that your traffic study takes into account not only the pedestrian traffic and the automobile traffic, but your loading and your unloading zone there as well, because it's very, very narrow, and you're going to need a lot of space. That is one component that I was concerned about. Secondly, I was concerned about the residential. You said you would eventually have some residential housing included. Where would the parking be for the residential component that you're contemplating putting in this project? And thirdly, lastly, it's really important that we engage the public and make sure that every aspect of this project is user-friendly for the public as well, because this is the public square, and that's really important. Thank you.
Thank you.
The dimensions that have been left for future development have been set up to accommodate those future uses. What it ends up being remains to be seen. But on St. Clair specifically, that dimension from St. Clair to the wall of the parking garage has been set up in a way that it could accommodate future residential. Along West 6th Street, between West 6th Street and the west wall of the parking garage, that dimension has been set up where it can accommodate ground floor retail at a national level, as well as office above. So the dimensions that have been held are being held to promote future development and not hamstring any future developer from not possibly being able to do what they would like to do.
Thank you. We have about 20 more minutes for comments, so ask that people not repeat too much, and then we're going to need a little time for a motion. So August, and
Sure,
then,
sure. To the applicant, Madam Chair, you mentioned that you're going to have a landscape architect. That's great, but I consider what you're trying to achieve around the square, around all these buildings, is urban design and not landscape architecture. So if you could speak a little bit about that. And I just want to echo the importance of the public realm. I live near the Cleveland Clinic, and I'm not comparing you all to the Cleveland Clinic. It's a very insular institution. Hospitals generally are. And the way it sounds like this facility is going to be used, once people go in, it's not likely they're going to be coming out. So that the urban design component and not landscape architecture and creating opportunities is of paramount importance. Thank you.
okay, we have another comment from Giancarlo.
I'd like some clarification on this Frankfurt Avenue. Frankfurt Avenue has always been a rather dysfunctional street in Cleveland. It's been more or less a walkway to late night bars and or to get down to the flats. So I'm curious about that one area between the two buildings. Will that be close to traffic where it says vacated Frankfurt Avenue? Will that be close to traffic or remain open?
Yeah. Our vision is that once this is vacated, that we'd put some type of bollards across there so that it would easily be walkable, but it would not be open for pedestrian or
So it will be
vehicular
like a park-like environment, right?
Excuse me?
It'd be like a park.
Yeah, I mean, it would be a walkway. Now
Yeah.
the way this is set up, our employee traffic would come in the morning, would come in and enter the garage and exit on West 3rd Street at the end of the day. There would be loading, so I mean there would be, in essence, traffic to here somewhere, but it would be primarily in the morning and when we're leaving at the end of the day.
So we would be creating a park-like environment there then, a pedestrian walkway.
Yeah, I mean, we would definitely want to make sure because actually that's a way that a lot of our employees will also be coming in. You know, if they park on the lower levels of the garage, they'll be walking across. If they park in any of the other lots that are around here, they would also be walking down that Frankfurt. So we definitely want to make it pedestrian friendly.
So essentially, Frankfurt remains as a pedestrian thoroughfare,
Yeah,
but
yeah.
it's closed to vehicular traffic.
I think it's a great idea. That's good. Good. Sure.
I just wanted to respond to Mr. Fluker. We agree with you. It's landscape architect, urban designer. The firm that has been selected is both. So those issues that you're concerned about, that we're concerned about, will be addressed at the highest level.
Thank you, Madam Chair. With my philosophical comments out of the way, I will now give my really direct ones. The first one is, what are the dimensions of the larger sky bridge that spans West 3rd at the moment, roughly? Or is that not known?
I think what you use right now, 15 feet wide.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then on Frankfurt Avenue, from the parking garage to the front face building line of the office tower, what is the building separation there?
What's the distance?
Yes.
Great question. I would
From here to
be right here.
Right there. Yep.
Yes.
Good.
60 feet. Right away, 42 feet.
Yeah.
Okay.
So there. Thank you.
Pulls us towards the building. We're talking about right there right now. we are evaluating it because again, as we discussed, we still have more traffic studies. Thank you again. I tried to yell. We still have more traffic to study, and I think it's come from design review and also from this joint commission. The traffic's very critical here. I live and work downtown, so I can appreciate that. But these dotted lines on the plan here represent the existing right-of-way lines, and that's 42 feet. So we're perhaps 5 feet back on either side.
Perfect. And then my last comment is about the public plaza, which is, I'll be very direct here. After living in Europe for about 8 months, I understand public space and its relationship to use very well. And a big problem is when people say a space is going, we use these things like, oh, it's going to be very public and it's going to be very useful. And then, surprise, it's not, because we all just speculated that it would be. So my my charge is to think really of a way other than use and program, because program is determinant on time, right? This lobby is, I'm assuming, not going to be 24 hours a day. I'm assuming its uses aren't going to be 24 hours a day, of ways formally and architecturally, as not using the word program, but as an architecture to create public space here. That's my charge there. Thank you.
Thank you. I have a couple comments, and so does Freddie, but anybody else? Just wanted to see if anyone else has any additional comments. Okay, thank you. I'm not going to reiterate anything, but I just wanted to say that I think what I appreciated about the presentation today, and then a little bit of discussion, that brings home for me the idea that you articulated, that the pavilion is acting as a front porch. I mean, conceptually, that's just a brilliant idea for me. And I think in comparison to the Huntington Building or BP Tower, I actually think this iteration of the two buildings has more opportunity for more life and more because they are separated. And I didn't really appreciate that until today, just in terms of that huge opportunity. So I just want to challenge you a little bit more, just because I love the metaphor. And I think that Tom Yablonsky's idea about the roof is brilliant as well. So to maybe push the envelope now between concept to reality in terms of how the spirit of front porch can be enhanced. And just a couple ideas, but don't take them for their worth. But one, the veranda is fairly small. There's a larger veranda I saw on the tower that faces Superior. The roof might change that. I challenged Sherwin-Williams to think about the idea of the public access to the roof that doesn't have to come through the building. This idea that this can become public space, I think, to that question. I think that could be transformational, truthfully, for the city and for Sherwin-Williams to be the one to give that to the city, sort of more public space, this new view shed that, as I said, Tom, that was just brilliant from his. The second thought is just one of the concerns I'd had with when we were thinking about the mall and the new convention center was the couple simple things that happened that turned out to be not so good, right? The Abampan was placed not on the mall side, on the other side of the corner, and then just the life, So this retail liner is really interesting because you would think instinctively it belonged on West 3rd, but I agree that you should really think a little bit more about that. And the reason for me is that I now see Frankfurt, the possibility, and I know you're going through the vacation process, but in addition to pedestrian, I think bike access and articulation of bike access and how it is articulated, it could be one of the most charming streets. And I can't believe I'm going to say that, but if you really, this could be so charming. And that's the way I see it, like front porch and then charming. And I can't believe I'm saying that up against a tower, but I think it's possible because you actually have all the elements and so I appreciate that we didn't, the recommendation was not for the garage block yet, because I think there's some magic that you guys can put together here with some uses that we normally don't get in cities, right? A possible retail liner, a vacation of a street that's going to require pedestrian access. I do think the city needs to bring 55 Public Square to the table, and we really need to help rethink Frankfurt and the portion there, because it's not their responsibility, but it's huge. So I just say that I'm excited. I think there are some exciting transformational opportunities here to be what you said, which is a catalyst. And I think the catalyst now I can see is not just in terms of jobs and economic development, but a design catalyst for the future of the city. And so I'm excited for what might come. More comments and questions there.
Can I ask just one follow-up question? You know, we've been talking a lot about this retail liner, and I come from a development background, but, you know, I also would view this as being a little challenging, you know, along West 3rd. If we were to take that and draw that along Frankfurt, is that something that...
Yeah.
I would vote yes. But I'm not the only one. But I would vote yes. But I would say also, it's also incumbent on us and the city and Downtown Cleveland Alliance and others to help you guys program that successfully in terms of what could go on there. Like, it's going to take a little bit of community work, but it's possible is what I'm saying. Like, we've got to work with you to make sure what could go in there.
If this were developed, obviously, you know, this would be a more natural corridor than up along West 3rd.
Yeah. All right.
One quick comment.
Freddie, and then Giancarlo has one more. We'll keep going.
All right, so I want to just kind of double down on the Frankfurt conversation. From our position, just so you know, we would prefer that the entirety of the block is lined, period. Okay, that's a preference. We know that the reality of transacting that now is an impossibility at this point. What we're talking about is priority now. You always got to decide, okay, what do you do first? Now, we are not in favor of not having some type of retail on our major corridors. We can't have blank spots on these major corridors, particularly when we have opportunities to infill them. That does not negate the importance of Frankfurt and opportunity. So even if it takes maturing and building out the site to that point, that should be the North Star. So is that fair?
I don't know. I think we're going to have to debate that one.
All right. So the other couple of points I want to make with respect to Frankfurt, that you're keeping the pedestrian in mind with respect to that cut through, and I hate to use the term cut through. The fact is that it breaks up a super block, right? So having that pedestrian articulation there, I think, is important. The question that I did have was with respect to the actual building footprints themselves, and this is why the request was made in the previous meeting to have a rendering that shows what that streetscape activity would look like, particularly for your building itself. Your thousands of employees are going to bleed down to that first floor at some point in the workday for some reason or whatever, whether it's coming or going or whether it's activity during the day. The public needs to be able to see that activity at the street level. So just talk to me about the glazing on the perimeter of the site, particularly at the ground level, because I think that's going to be very tremendous with respect to that interface with the actual public realm.
So relative to the material palette, we're just at the beginning. What I can tell you, and what I'm saying right now is not anything that has been reviewed with Sherwin-Williams, but by reference, typically what we would do at the ground level is that the glass would be very transparent, and so you see activity inside the space. So, but we're not there yet on this project, but it's consistent with what we do on other projects.
Yeah, so keep that in mind because I think that's key. The other thing is the Superior Avenue refresh, because there needs to be a refresh of Superior Avenue. I agree wholeheartedly. I think everybody around the tables agrees that you have to deal with Superior. That's key. Out of any connection, that Superior situation needs to be dealt with. The other thing I want to ask is that, look, cars are not going away. People need to understand that, but they will transition. So electric vehicles We know that many of the industries are going all electric. Will you have accommodations for that in your facility, in your garage, on your site? How will that work?
Yeah, well, we are making provisions to have electric charging stations in the parking garage.
Okay. The other thing, this goes back to what Chairwoman Curry was talking about with respect to the retail, but also with respect to the housing development that Ms. McCrae brought up. There will need to be partnerships, obviously, with community and economic development to really help to recruit, businesses and really start to recruit development interest for development on those sites. The notion of having the mixed use and the residential, particularly on the St. Clair side, if you walk on that St. Clair side and you take a stroll, you look on one side of the street, it actually feels like a neighborhood street. And if you start to build that out, that other side where the parking lot is with residential, you'll have a residential filling block in the heart of a downtown. And I think that's a huge opportunity that people underestimate with respect to that side of the street. And then lastly, I just want to go ahead. I'm sorry.
I mean, what a wonderful opportunity to be able to have 7 acres to build a tower, a front door,
and a neighborhood. Yeah, that's tremendous. And then the other thing I want to just throw out there is with respect to, you mentioned Bollards for Frankfurt. If we can rethink the type of solution other than Bollards, because there are options for things that would be rated appropriately, that provides that separation that you would need, that are more aesthetically pleasing than Bollards. I was in Europe and I actually saw some, I don't know what they were made of, but they had to be durable, but they had bollards. They were kind of like a brushed aluminum type of a look, and they can actually go down into the ground at time. They were amazing. Yeah. And I'm just thinking, with a building that's as attractive as the direction that you're going, every aspect of what you do should have that appeal as well.
Well, we've actually been talking about, like, what does that really look like? What does that feel like? Because, obviously if you got a truck or something stuck in that Frankfurt, you'd want to be able to take the bollards out, make sure that they can pass through. So you need something that can, be mobile, but attractive. And it's not like we're really trying to stop a tank from going through there. So yeah, we're open for suggestions on what that might be.
Thank you.
Okay, Giancarlo?
Yeah. Again, I actually am amazed that you're able to put this package together, because basically these are lots that were part of previous projects in Cleveland, including Dick Jacobs, like we discussed briefly before. So, but it's also the last 2 or 3 pieces of a puzzle. This is it as far as public square is concerned. So the opportunity to do something really beautiful, amazing, and not only for Sherwin-Williams, but for the whole community, for the entire city, is just sitting there to be developed, to be discovered, And I agree with what they said. I think, this idea that we have an opportunity to make that public square truly a masterpiece of architecture for the country, actually, not only for the city of Cleveland. It's just waiting to be developed, I think.
Okay, last call, and then we're going to try to resolve a motion. Anybody else? Yes, Michelle?
Thank you so much. I'm going to make this brief. It's been a tradition in the city of Cleveland to commission sculptors or artists to adorn the buildings, these iconic buildings that we have built throughout the decades. I was wondering, have you made any considerations for, maybe commissioning some artwork or having a competition, especially since you are, Giancarlo brought this up, you are a paint company, so I would think we could enhance the structure with some very colorful artwork. Just wanted to hear some comments on that.
Yeah, we actually have had those discussions. In fact, we've got I think some of you that might have come to our office, we've shown a mock-up area, and we've actually commissioned some art pieces that are all the Sherwin-Williams paints, and then we have a little legend right by it so you can see what paint colors were used. But yeah, I think the idea of taking, incorporating art obviously into our branding it works. It's a win-win.
I think from a
perspective, the opportunity exists. Bill mentioned at one point in time, this product will be a beacon of Sherwin-Williams products. And how we use them moving forward, the sky's the limit. There's metal coatings, there's concrete coatings, there's aluminum coatings. I heard loud and clear painted steel bollards at West 3rd Street. Probably not the right opportunity, but maybe we'll take that off the list. But the point is the brand, the ability to portray brand will come in a number of different ways. Products, coatings, art, relationships, basically.
I'd say Commissioner Slice's idea and the city giving you permission to paint Frankfurt we have to give you some kind of exclusion from the city's requirement not to paint streets. If there was ever a street that deserved to be painted, it would be Frankfurt. So maybe we could add that to the motion. I'm just kidding, but I'm up for it. No, but I'm actually being serious. Like, if there was a street that should be as vibrant, the street itself with your street paint, that should be it. So, all right, so here's what I think we're going to do. I'm going to need someone to make a motion. You can add to, if you agree with the design reviews motion. So I'm going to reread, and Jack's going to correct me if I don't get it right. And then I'll need someone to make a motion. You can add to it, but in addition to what design review's motion was. So design review gave conceptual approval, excluding the northwestern block, for issues of restudying or rethinking the retail strategy and other issues around the block. So that block does not get conceptual approval. A traffic study that would take place in collaboration with the city and include pedestrian and bike circulation as well, so not just about cars. And that would include people coming to and from the facility itself as well as passing through. The pavilion height, there was a general consensus that it needed to be increased and consideration for roof access. I think we added, hopefully, public roof access. And then lastly was to actually, through drawings, really demonstrate in this next level of development, the street level experience, including the temporary lots in Frankfurt and the entire streets that surround, with the desire for obviously enhancing those as we've all discussed today. I get it, Jack?
Yes, the last one was relative to the temporary lots, potentially to increase the amount of landscape.
Yes. So not only showing them, but really enhancing them, since temporary really means interim is probably a better word than temporary. Interim use, parking lots. All right. Anybody want to make a motion and or add to it? You may. Oh, that wasn't the motion, by the way. That you would be making a motion with those considerations.
Right. So I would add a condition that the design of the Sky Bridge, be a primary element and be, an architectural feature, not just a horizontal circulation function.
Bridge of Sighs in Venice. The Bridge of Sighs in Venice.
He said the comment was to add consideration of special design of the Sky Bridge. I'm not sure we should dictate what that is. I mean, I think they hear us. It should be extraordinary. It may or may not be a super hyper transparent bridge. You don't know how you're going to go with it, but that it not be a kind of mundane off the shelf Sky Bridge, I think is what you're hearing.
Can I add a provision to the traffic and pedestrian study that it not just have graphic representation, but I would love to see the data to back it up, not just assumed drawings, the actual. I would just want to see the numbers and the data that backs up with it.
The city will require a traffic study data analysis.
Can we add what study on utilities going through
the utilities?
Can we add more information on the utility going to the Sky Bridge? and I would like to see more information on options backup on the Sky Bridge, the utilities.
Purview. I'm not sure if that's in the purview of this commission, these commissions. I think what I heard today is that there will be both utilities going through the Sky Bridge as well as backup in
Okay,
addition
'cause-
to it. But honestly, I'm not entirely sure, unless there's a design consideration there that it's within the purview, but.
Okay. All right, that's fine, because
Okay.
that was brought up in your presentation.
Okay.
I think we have to remain conceptual since it is a concept, really,
Yep.
and not to get
Yep.
too deep into the details at this point.
All right, so does someone want to actually make a motion?
Yes. I'll try this. Should be simple. I move to adopt the motion from design review session earlier today with the added amendments as stated herein.
Okay. And the added commitment was coming back with additional design considerations for the Sky Bridge, and it's a sort of,
And the pavilion.
and this, what was the, I think that was the only one I heard.
The pavilion was part of
That's it.
Right.
Yep. Okay, so we have a motion to adopt design reviews comments as I stated, with additional comments about the design of the Sky Bridge being special. I'll just use that term. And I'll need a second.
I'll second.
All right, we have 2 seconds. We'll give it to Raymond. So we have a design and a motion and a second. We'll need to take roll.
Okay, ready?
Thank you.
Anderson.
Yes.
Anderson. Bailey. Bailey.
Yes.
Bonizzi.
Yes.
Kalikia.
Yes.
I actually have to vote. Yes.
That would be the alcohol roll for you.
Downing. Oh, she's not here. Dreyer.
Yes.
Fluker.
Yes.
Jones. Curry.
Yes.
McCray Scott.
Yes.
Slife.
Yes.
Strickland.
Yes.
Tarasik.
Yes.
We have a.
The motion
Affirmative.
passes unanimously. I really want to thank you again. I think we all thank you, and thank you for the partnership and openness, and we look forward to working and seeing you soon.
And I'm going to close the meeting by saying to our listening audience, this is the first of 3 iterations of presentation that you'll be hearing. And we will be back to you at the next date for the actual schematic review. And we would like to thank everyone for tuning in and thank the presenters from Sherwin-Williams, as well as thank all of our committee members. And I would also like to send a special thanks to the Planning Commission staff, who was very instrumental in organizing this very complex, complicated endeavor. So thank you all.
Thank you. That's an understatement.
Akimi reached for the card on top of the purple stack. When she saw what was written on it, she frowned. What's the clue? Asked Kyle. Something about literature, rhetoric, or criticism? Asked Miguel. Nope, said Akimi. It's a wild card with a riddle. Read it, said Sierra. I rhyme with dart and cracker jacks. Visit me and find a rhyme for Andy. Peckelman? Said Kyle. How do you get his name on a game card? Bro, said Miguel. Nobody calls Andrew Peckelman Andy. Of course, it could mean Andrew Jackson, the 7th President of the United States. Or Andy Panda, said Akimi. Or Andrew Carnegie, said Sierra. He was a generous supporter of libraries. Okay, said Kyle. Let's concentrate on the first part of the riddle. What rhymes with dart and cracker jacks? Smart and heart attacks, suggested Miguel. Art and bric-a-brac, said Sierra. Art and artifacts, said Akimi, nailing it. They hurried over to the art and artifacts room. Everybody, check out the display cases, said Kyle. See if anything rhymes with the word Andy. Well, this model of the old bake building is certainly grandy, said Miguel, and the Pharaoh's pyramid and Sphinx would be sandy if they weren't made out of Legos. True, said Kyle, sounding unconvinced about both. Check it out, you guys, cried Akimi, who was studying a row of styrofoam heads sporting hats. This plain fedora from 1968 was worn by a guy named Leopold Loblolly. So, said Kyle? According to this plaque, Loblolly was one of the notorious dandy bandits. Dandy rhymes with Andy. That it does, said Miguel. However, Loblolly does not. Neither does Leopold, added Kyle. Candy rhymes with Andy, said Sierra. She was staring at the objects in a display case under a banner reading, Welcome to the Wonderful World of Willy Wonka. Awesome, said Miguel, hurrying over to admire the collection of everlasting gobstoppers, glumptious glopperlers, Laffy Taffy, and pixie sticks displayed under the glass in a sea of purple velvet. Mr. Limoncello is a lot like Willy Wonka, said Kyle. You mean crazy, said Akimi. I prefer the term eccentric. And Dr. Zinchenko is his Oompa Loompa, said Sierra. Everybody started giggling. Nah, Akimi joked, she's too tall, and not nearly orange enough, added Miguel. The Willy Wonka book was written by Roald Dahl, said Sierra, who, Kyle figured, could name 12 other books the guy wrote too. In it, Mr. Wonka takes Charlie and Grandpa Joe home in a flying glass elevator that crashes through the roof of his chocolate factory. Everybody thought about that for a second. So now we have to find a glass elevator, said Akimi? Because there isn't one on the floor plan. But Mr. Limoncello is just wild enough to build one, said Kyle. And if he did, he probably wouldn't put it on the floor plan. No way, said Miguel. Everybody would want to ride on it. I know I would, said Sierra. So we're seriously searching for a secret glass elevator, said Akimi. Maybe, said Kyle, maybe not. This is just another piece of a gigantic jigsaw puzzle. We won't see the whole picture until we collect all the pieces. Or someone shows us the box leg, cracked Akimi. Look, it's only 6 p.m., said Kyle, and we're collecting a ton of good information. You mean a ton of random information, said Akimi. Well, said Miguel, once we have more clues, we can use Sherlock Holmes' famous deductive reasoning method to make logical connections between all the random junk. Works for me, said Kyle, but if we're going to play Sherlock Holmes, we need to go and spin that spinner and dig up more clues. The game's afoot, said Sierra. Huh? Kyle and Akimi said together. Sorry, it's just something Sherlock says to Watson whenever he gets excited. Sherlock Holmes. Kyle had just found another bunch of books to add to his reading list. And it's kind of become a heated race between Kyle's team and Charles Chiltington. And things are starting to get heated, and a lot of people are starting to choose their teams, so it should be an interesting next few chapters. Alright, chapter 32. Okay, Sierra, said Kyle, your turn. Sierra flicked the spinner. The pointy tip ended up in the yellow 200 zone, so she went ahead and pulled a yellow card. It's definitely for the 200 section, she said, showing her clue to Miguel before revealing it to Kyle and Akimi. Weird, said Miguel. What, said Akimi before Kyle could. Well, the 200s are where they keep books on world religions. But there are 2 numbers on this card, said Sierra. Maybe this time we need to find 2 books, suggested Kyle. I don't know, said Sierra, studying her card. 220.5203 is obviously a call number. Obviously, said Akimi. But this other number isn't in the proper format. 2/2015. February 20th, 2015, said Akimi. Quick, what happened on that date? Nobody knows, said Kyle, because it hasn't happened yet. Oh, right. Okay, how about February 20th, 1915? That was the opening day of the Panama Pacific International Exposition in San Francisco, said Sierra. Jaws dropped. Sorry, I am a big World's Fair fan. Everyone else just nodded. Finally, Miguel spoke up. Look, let's just go down to the 200s room and find 220.5203. We can figure out the second chunk later. The team once again trooped down to the second floor and worked their way around the circular balcony. You guys, said Sierra, looking across the atrium at the statues, remember how they switched all the hologram authors when Bridget Wadge did her extreme challenge? Yep, said Kyle. She was doing good till she got to the Russian dude. What Russian dude? Asked Miguel, who hadn't witnessed Bridget's elimination. Guy who wrote 5 or 6 books Sierra could tell you about. But look, said Sierra, now all the other authors' statues are the same ones they were last night. So, said Kyle thoughtfully, if they can switch them around, these must be clues for our game, blurted Akimi. She pulled out a pen and her notepad. I'll write down their names. Start with the guy under the 000's wedge of the Wonder Dome, suggested Kyle. Right. Akimi read the labeled pedestals and jotted down all the author names. Thomas Wolfe, Booker T. Washington, Stephen Sondheim, George Orwell, Lewis Carroll, Dr. Seuss, Maya Angelou, Shel Silverstein, Pseudonymous Bosch, Todd Strasser. So, said Akimi when she'd finished writing, do you think this game could get any more complicated? Maybe, said Kyle. It's possible that Mr. Lemoncello left a couple of different paths to the same solution. Well, personally, I can only take one path at a time, said Akimi, so let's go find 220 point whatever. Should be in the next row of bookcases, said Miguel. Here we go, 220.5203, the King James Bible. Ach, der Lieber, an excellent choice, said a man with a thick German accent. The 4 teammates spun around and were face to face with a semi-transparent guy in medieval garb with a fur-trimmed cap and a beard that looked like 2 raccoon tails sewn together under his nose and chin. I am Johannes Gensfleisch zur Laden zum Gutenberg, said the holographic image, who had ink stains all over his fingertips. You created the Gutenberg Bibles on your printing press, gushed Sierra. Yeah, big bestseller. You need help with their Bible? I am at your service. He bowed. Oh, okay, said Akimi, turning to Miguel. Take it away, Miguel. Herr Gutenberg, sir, we're looking for 220/15. Das ist einfach. Huh? That is easy. 2:20:15 is Exodus chapter 20, verse 15. Of course, said Miguel. Exodus is the second book of the Bible. 20 and 15 are the chapter and verse. He flipped through some pages. Here we go, Exodus chapter 20, verse 15. It's one of the 10 commandments. Thou shalt not steal. 33. Let's put 2 new cards on the table, said Charles. He and his so-called teammates, Andrew and Haley, Charles planned on dumping them both right before he made his glorious solo exit from the library, had scoured the library together for hours looking for more book cover matches. Peckerman wasn't nearly as good with the Dewey Decimal System as he had claimed to be, and Charles needed someone to do that sort of thing for him. His father always hired tutors or research assistants for him wherever Charles had to do a major paper or report. Finally, around 6 in, coincidentally, the 600s room, they scored twice, finding T for You and Me, 641.3372, and Why Wait to Lose Weight, 613.2522. Now their picture puzzle had only 4 blanks remaining. Here's the picture puzzle. Okay, said Andrew, I think it's pretty clear. Woolly blank, walk up the skinny blank blank, house Indian and 19 blank. Charles nodded and said, interesting, even though he knew Peckelman was way off. Hello, said Haley, that doesn't make any sense. Sure it does, said Andrew. No, it doesn't. In his head, Charles had decoded the clues so far as you, a female sheep, blank, walk out the THE, way, blank blank, in past, blank. But out loud he said, I think we just need to tweak Andrew's translation a little. Fine, go ahead, I don't care. Andrew slumped down in his seat to sulk. How about she blank walks out the skinny blank blank house 500 and past blank? Where'd you get she? Asked Haley. From sheep, the card you gave us. Actually, I think the sheep is supposed to represent you, because a ewe is a female sheep. Fascinating, said Charles. I didn't figure that out. What he did figure out was that Haley Daly was much smarter than he had assumed. She could be a serious threat, and no way was Charles sharing his prize with anybody, especially her. "And how did you get 500 from Indiana?" she asked. "Simple. Indianapolis, the capital of Indiana, is home to a race known as the Indy 500. Okay, so how about you blank walk out the skinny blank blank in, because the Nancy Drew book was about an in, 500 pass or past blank." Now Peckelman piped up. "That makes more sense than what you said, Charles." "Indeed," said Charles, sounding magnanimous. "Perhaps the clues are telling us to locate a secret skinny passageway 500 paces past some landmark here in the library." Andrew was excited. "This is like the pirate map from Treasure Island." "Or," said Haley, "maybe these clues are telling us we need to go out and find the 4 books we haven't found yet. We should split up. I'll go back to the 400 room." "We've already been there," said Andrew. "Well, you guys might have missed something." "Good idea," said Charles. He figured if Haley Daly wasted time retracing steps he and Andrew had already taken, she would find nothing new and become less of a threat. "Let's meet back here at, say, 7? "Fine." Haley left the meeting room. Charles went to the door and closed it. "You know what we really need," he said to Andrews. "Chocolate milk and maybe some cookies?" Charles shook his head. "No, Andrew. We need whatever clues Kyle Keeley and his team have found, especially if they have our missing cards." Uh-oh. Kyle's in for some trouble, it looks like. Chapter 34. Veering left the instant she reached the 2nd floor, Haley made her way toward the 400s room. She figured that Charles and Andrew had probably missed something important in the foreign languages room because they'd spent too much time talking to these awesome mannequins that told them all about their American heritage. As she rounded the bend, Haley saw Kyle Keeley and his crew tumble out of the 200s room. It looked like Miguel was carrying a Bible, but a Bible wasn't one of the books on display in the staff picks case. We're following separate paths to the same goal, Haley thought, and somewhere those 2 paths are going to collide. Haley slid her card key down the reader slot in the 400 store. The lock clicked and she pushed the door open. The room was dimly lit. "Bienvenida, bienvenue, Watami, Kowaka Rubirisha. Welcome," boomed a voice from the ceiling speakers. "Sorry," said Haley, blindly feeling her way forward and bumping into something hard and lumpy. "This is the 400 room, home of foreign languages. Here, Haley, you can learn all about your American heritage." A bank of spotlights thumped on. Haley was basically hugging a department store mannequin. An overhead projector beamed a movie onto the dummy. To her left, turning it into a perky woman who looked like Haley would probably look a couple of years after she graduated from college. "Hello, Haley. Welcome to Your American Heritage. Let's begin your voyage." "That's okay. I don't have time right now. I'm Haley Daly. My ancestors were Irish, okay? So can we skip the history lesson and..." Suddenly, the 2 mannequins at the far end of the row turned into sepia-toned versions of her great-great-great-grandmother and great-great-great-grandfather. Haley knew it was them because her dad had a bunch of old photos hanging in their living room. The 2 dummies looked exactly like Patrick and Una Daly did in their wedding portrait. "No man ever wore a scarf as warm as his daughter's arm around his neck," said Patrick in his thick Irish brogue. "Your dad's proud of you, Haley." "Thanks, but I really need to win this competition." "Watch out for sneaky rascals," said Una. "Them that would steal the sugar out of your punch." Haley had to smile. It sounded like her ancestor had met Charles Chiltington. "And always remember, Haley," said her great-great-great-grandfather, "every woman's mind is her kingdom. Rule it wisely, lassie." "I'm trying. This library can help," said her great-great-grandmother with a wink. And when she did, a secret panel in the wall slid open. "What's going on?" said Haley. "You're our 3rd visitor," boomed the jolly announcer in the ceiling. "So, according to the American Heritage Dictionary of Idioms, available in our reference department, by the way, the 3rd time is a charm. Therefore, as our 3rd visitor, you have won this charming bonus." 2 bonuses in one day? She was right. Mr. Lemoncello definitely wanted Haley Daly to win this game, because clearly he knew she'd be the perfect best-looking spokesmodel for his holiday commercials. "Don't worry, sir," Haley said to the nearest TV camera. "I won't let you down." She hurried through the open wall panel and into the 300 room on the other side. Ta-da! The first thing she saw was one of the books they'd been searching for all day long, True Crime Ohio, the Buckeye State's Most Notorious Brigands, Burglars, and Bandits, by Claire Taylor Winters. She quickly opened the cover and found the hidden 4x4 card. It took her 2 seconds to decipher the clue. It looks like a band walking, and it's bandits. Haley remembered another bit of Irish wisdom, something her dad said all the time: never bolt your door with a boiled carrot. She decided to keep this new clue secret and secure. She wouldn't share it with Charles or Andrew. Haley took off her left sneaker, folded the card in half, and slid the clue into her shoe for safekeeping. When her sneaker was laced up tight again, she took up the True Crime Ohio book off its display stand and tucked it into the bookshelf, making sure it was in the proper position, right between 364.1091 and 364.1093. That way, she'd know where to look again if, for whatever reason, she needed the book again. Haley looked up at the nearest camera and flashed it her brightest toothpaste commercial smile. Go Lemoncello, that's a cheer I just made up. We can use it in one of the commercials, after I win. Sounds like Haley Daly is feeling pretty sure of herself. Chapter 35. Entrance to Community Meeting Room B will only be granted to Kyle Keeley, Sierra Russell, Akimi Hughes, and Miguel Fernandez, said the soothing female voice in the ceiling after the 4 teammates had swiped their card through the meeting room door's reader's slot. This makes sense, said Akimi. We needed a place to organize all this material, put it on the walls, and draw a chart like the FBI always does on the TV when they're tailing the mob. Stole the meeting room idea from me, eh, Keeley? Charles Chiltington was standing in the doorway to meeting room A on the far side of the rotunda. No, said Kyle, we just needed someplace to throw our victory party after we win. Not going to happen, Charles said smugly. Must I remind you, I'm a Chiltington. We never lose. And he disappeared back into meeting room A. After Charles was gone, Kyle led his team into meeting room B. Miguel posted the bank blueprints he had found up on the walls while Sierra set up the Bibliomania game board on the conference table. I'm glad this room won't let anybody else in, said Kyle. And by anybody you mean Charles Chiltington, right? Said Akimi. Totally. Akimi grabbed a marker and wrote a neat outline on the dry erase walls. Clues so far. Definite clues. Number 1. From the zeros room, get to know your local library book. Number 2. From the art and artifacts room, Willy Wonka candy, rhymes with Andy. Find glass elevator? Number 3, from the 200s room, Bible verse, thou shalt not steal. Probably clues. Books/authors on the backs of library cards. Number 1, Miguel Fernandez, Incident at Hawks Hill by Alan W. Eckert. No David by David Shannon. Number 2, Akimi Hughes, One Fish, Two Fish, Red Fish, Blue Fish by Dr. Seuss /9 Stories by J.D. Salinger. Number 3, Unknown. Number 4, Bridget Watch, Tales of a Fourth Grade Nothing by Judy Blume, Harry Potter and the Sorcerer's Stone by J.K. Rowling. Number 5, Sierra Russell, The Egypt Game by Zilpha Keatley Snyder, The Weston Game by Ellen Raskin. Number 6, Yasmin Smith Snyder, Around the World in 80 Days by Jules Verne, The Yak Who Yelled Yuck by Carol Pugliano Martin. Number 7, Sean Keegan, Olivia by Ian Falconer, Unreal by Paul Jennings. Number 8, Unknown. Number 9, Rose Vermette, All of a Kind Family by Sidney Taylor, Scat by Carl Hyacin. Number 10, Kayla Corson, Anna to the Infinite Power by Mildred Ames, Where the Sidewalk Ends by Shel Silverstein. Number 11, Unknown. Number 12, Kyle Keeley, I Love You Stinky Face by Lisa McCourt, The Napping House by Audrey Wood. Maybe clues? Statues ringed around the dome. Thomas Wolfe, Booker T. Washington, Stephen Sondheim, George Orwell, Lewis Carroll, Dr. Seuss, Maya Angelou, Shel Silverstein, Pseudonymous Bosch, and Todd Strasser. Statues ringed around the dome. Thomas Wolfe, Booker T. Washington, Stephen Sondheim, George Orwell, Lewis Carroll, Dr. Seuss, Maya Angelou, Shel Silverstein, Pseudonymous Bosch, Todd Strasser. Wow, said Akimi, stepping back to study the walls. What an incredible mess. Yeah, said Kyle. Okay, guys. There are 8 more book rooms to explore, and who knows how many more wild cards. Whose turn is it? Yours, said Sierra. Kyle flicked the spinner. Green, the 500s, science. He pulled the first green card from the deck. 4 and 20 were once in a pie. 598.367 might tell you why. Blackbird, said Miguel? I guess. Well, sighed Akimi, let's go check out another book. There's still like an inch or two left on our whiteboard. The 500s room was like a miniature museum of natural history. In addition to towering walls of books, there was a whole planetarium of stars and constellations projected on the ceiling. Models of planets whirled in their orbits, sparkle-tailed comets shot around the corners of bookshelves. Kyle and his teammates made their way back to the 590s, zoology. Shelving units were arranged in a square around an open area, maybe 20 feet by 20 feet wide. When the team entered the empty space, the lights dimmed and a guy with long wavy hair who looked like an artistic Daniel Boone faded into view. He was wearing some kind of bear fur coat and toting a musket. Bonjour, said the hologram. It's John James Audubon, said Sierra, the famous ornithologist. He gives people braces, said Kyle. No, Sierra said with a laugh. He studied and painted birds. A blackbird with a yellow beak flew into the open area and roosted on a tree branch. The bird and the tree were both holograms, too. This beautiful blackbird from Alexandriaville, Ohio, said the semi-transparent Audubon image, can mimic in song the sounds it has heard. And the bird started wailing. Wow, said Akimi, that sounds exactly like a police siren. Yo, said Miguel, freaky. To learn more, said Audubon, be sure to read Bird Songs, Warbles, and Whistles, written by Dr. Diana Victoria Garcia, with classic illustrations by moi. With that, Audubon sat down on a camp stool. An easel appeared. The blackbird struck a pose, and the outdoorsy artist started painting the bird's portrait, while humming Blackbird by the Beatles. Okay, said Kyle, this is the strangest clue yet. Well, here's the book at least, said Sierra, who had found 598.367 on the shelf. So what do a blackbird's wails and warbles have to do with finding your way out of the library, said Akimi. Just then, they heard a very different sound. Behind one of the bookcases, something growled, then roared. Did you guys hear that, said Sierra. Yeah, said Akimi, I don't think it's a robin redbreast. A very rare white Bengal tiger with icy blue eyeballs crept out from behind a wall of bookshelves and stalked into the open area where Audubon sat painting his bird portrait. Is that another hologram? Asked Miguel. Roar! No one stuck around to find out. Chapter 36. Down on the first floor, Charles and Andrew were working their way around the semicircle of 3-story tall, floor-to-dome bookcases filled with fiction. It was nearly 8 p.m. We need to find that blasted book, said Charles, craning his head to study the bookshelves. I'm getting kind of hungry, mumbled Andrew. We had a snack this afternoon, snapped Charles. Well, now it's time for dinner. No, we need to find Anne of Green Gables first. The classic by Lucy Maud Montgomery was the middle book on the top shelf in the staff pig's display case. So far, Charles, Haley, and Andrew had not been able to find it anywhere in the library. Unfortunately, said Andrew, they've temporarily erased the book's call number from the database. So we wouldn't know what to punch into the hover ladder's control panel, grumbled Charles. Actually, said Andrew, they might have shelved it in the children's room, or maybe the 800s with literature. Could be in the 400s too, because it was originally written in Canadian, which is technically a foreign language. So you have said, Andrew, repeatedly. But we've already searched those other locations several times. It has to be here with the other fiction titles. You just need to fly up and find it. Well, said Andrew, I'm kind of afraid of heights. Fine, whatever. I'll go up and grab it, but you have to give me some kind of call number to enter into the hover ladder. Lucy Maud Montgomery wrote other Anne books. There's Anne of Avonlea. Charles dashed over to the nearest library table and swiped his fingers across the glass face of its built-in computer pad. Here we go. Anne of Avonlea by Lucy Maud Montgomery. F. Mon. Yes, said Andrew. Fiction books are usually put on the shelf in alphabetical order by the author's last name. Non-fiction titles are classified according to the Dewey Decimal System. How long have you known this? Andrew's nose twitched. Since 2nd grade. So all we ever needed was F. Mon? We could have found this book hours ago? Andrew gulped. You are such a disappointment. Shaking his head, Charles huffed over to one of the hover ladders. He quickly jabbed F, M, O, and N into the keypad. The boot clamps locked into place around his ankles. You owe me for wasting all this time, Andrew. You owe me big time. If you let me down once more, I swear I will tell everybody you're a big blubbering baby. I'll Twitter it and post it on Facebook. Don't worry. I'll make you glad you picked me for your team, Charles. I promise. The hover ladder lifted off the floor and gently glided up to the M section of the fiction wall. Shuttling sideways, it carried Charles over to a shelf displaying all the Anne books. He grabbed a copy of Anne of Green Gables. As soon as he did, the ladder started its slow descent to the floor. "What'd you find?" asked Andrew when Charles landed. "The clue we needed." He showed Andrew the card that had been tucked inside the front cover. C+, and that's a picture of Anne of Green Gables from the cover. "Okay," said Andrew, "it's C plus hat, so the word is chat, which, by the way, could also be shot, the French word for cat." "Well done, Andrew," said Charles, even though he knew the clue was really C plus Anne equaling can, thereby making the puzzle, you can walk out the way blank blank in past blank. The way what did what, he wondered, and what does in mean? Charles desperately needed to find the 3 missing pictograms. Suddenly, Mr. Lemoncello's voice boomed out of speakers ringing the rotunda. "Hey, Charles! Hey, Andrew! Let's do a deal!" Game show music blared. A canned crowd cheered. Charles turned around and saw shafts of colored light illuminating 3 envelopes perched on top of the librarian's round desk. Clarence, the security guard, marched into the reading room and, folding his arms over his chest, took up a position near the 3 envelopes. "We have a green envelope, a blue envelope, and a red envelope," said Mr. Lemoncello. "In 2 of those 3 envelopes are copies of 2 of the 3 pictogram clues you still need. In 1, there is a clunker card. If you pick an envelope with a clue, you get to keep it, and you get to keep going. But once you pick the clunker card, you're done, and you must suffer the consequences." Andrew raised his hand. "Yes, Andrew? What are the consequences?" "Something bad," said Mr. Lemoncello. "In fact, something wicked this way will probably come. Do you want to do a deal?" "Yes," said Charles. The canned audience cheered. "All right then, Charles. You roll first." "Pardon?" "Swipe your fingers across the nearest desktop computer panel. The Dice Tumbler app is up and running." Again, the pre-recorded audience cheered. They sounded like they loved watching dice tumble more than anything in the world. Charles slid his fingers across a glass pane. The animated dice rolled. "Oh," cried Mr. Lemoncello, "double 6s. That gives you a 12. "Is that good, sir?" "Maybe, maybe not." "Okay, Andrew, your turn." Puckleman tapped the glass. The dice flipped over. "Another set of doubles," said Mr. Lemoncello. "Yeah," muttered Charles. 2 1s, snake eyes. "Is that bad?" asked Andrew. "Maybe," said Mr. Lemoncello. "Maybe not." "Okay, guys, which envelope would you like to open?" Charles thought of it while tick-tock music played. They were given this chance to play Let's Do a Deal after they located the Anne of Green Gables clue. Coincidence? He didn't think so. "We'll take the green envelope, sir." Clarence presented the green envelope to Charles. "Open it," said Andrew. "Open it." Charles undid the clasp and pulled out a card. A loud zonk rocked the room. The card was blank with blocky white type. "Uh-oh," mumbled Andrew. "What's it say on that card?" "Sorry, kids, you're out of luck," read Charles. "So out of doors, you're all now stuck." Clarence picked up the blue and red envelopes and marched back towards the entrance hall. "What's that mean?" said Andrew. "Well," said Mr. Lemoncello, "Charles rolled a 12, and